Hello, and thank you so much for joining me today. Well, let's just say I'm a brain specialist, a doctor who has spent many years working with the World Health Organization, or WHO for short. Normally, I'm the one you'd see wearing a white coat, standing by the patient's bed, or quietly talking with families in hospital corridors. But today, I'm not here as just a doctor. I'm here as someone who has recently been a patient myself, and as someone who, for the first time in a long while, truly felt the vulnerability, the worry, and the overwhelming emotions that come when health is on the line. Not long ago, I underwent a surgery, a personal health event that, while challenging, opened my eyes in ways I never expected. As I lay in that hospital bed, I had a lot of time to think. I listened to the quiet beeps of machines, the hushed voices of nurses, and most of all, the whispers and tears of family members gathered by the bedsides of their loved ones. In those moments, I found myself not just as a doctor, but as someone who deeply empathized with every person in that room. The sense of uncertainty, the helplessness, the fear for someone you love, it is something that unites us all, no matter where we come from or what we do for a living. This experience, combined with countless stories I've witnessed during my years working with patients and their families, is what brings me here, speaking to you now. Because sometimes the most important thing we can offer each other is not just medical knowledge, but real understanding, a bridge between professional expertise and human experience. That is the spirit in which I want to share today. Why are we talking about heart stroke today? You see, for most people, the word stroke brings up one immediate thought: the brain. We think of sudden weakness, slurred speech, the drooping of one side of the face, classic signs of a brain stroke. These are, of course, incredibly serious and deserve all the awareness they get. But what if I told you that the heart too can suffer a kind of stroke, an event every bit as urgent and devastating, but often less understood? In the medical world, we call it a cardiac stroke or heart stroke, terms that honestly aren't always clear or well known, even among people who've dealt with health issues for years. Some may know it as a heart attack, but the reality is a bit more complex. The point is, when the blood supply to the heart is suddenly cut off, the damage can be just as swift, just as severe, and sometimes even more fatal than what happens in the brain. But here's the truth that concerns me, and the reason I'm reaching out through this recording. Heart strokes, or sudden blockages in the heart's blood supply, can strike anyone at any time. And they are in many ways even more dangerous than strokes of the brain, simply because so few people recognize the warning signs or understand how little time there is to act. Over my years in hospitals and clinics, I have seen far too many families shattered, not because they ignored a loved one's pain, but because they simply didn't know what to look for, or because they believed, as so many do, that it can't happen to us. A doctor's reality. Stories that haunt and teach. Let me be honest with you. Being a doctor is not just about reading medical textbooks or writing prescriptions. It's about standing in the middle of raw, powerful emotions every day. It's about holding a patient's hand as they struggle to breathe and looking into the eyes of family members desperate for hope, answers, or sometimes just a little bit of comfort. I remember one night, late, around 2 a.m., when a young woman was brought into the emergency room. She was only 38. She'd been laughing with her friends at dinner, and suddenly she collapsed. Her family rushed her in, confused and terrified, convinced she was just overworked or stressed. But by the time she arrived, her heart had already suffered major damage. The sadness in her husband's eyes still haunts me. That moment made me realize the lack of knowledge about heart strokes is costing us lives, often the lives of people who seem healthy, strong, and far too young. And this is just one of dozens, no hundreds of stories I could share. Each one a reminder of how crucial it is to speak openly, honestly, and compassionately about these topics. A conversation, not a lecture. So as we begin this journey together, I want you to know I am not here to lecture or to overwhelm you with complicated medical jargon. My goal is to create a space where you feel understood, where you can take in life-saving knowledge in a way that feels natural, warm, and easy to remember. I want to talk to you as I would to a friend, a neighbor, or a family member, because ultimately, Health is something we all share responsibility for together. Over the next sections, we'll explore what a heart stroke truly is, how it's different from a brain stroke, and, most importantly, how you can spot the warning signs, protect your loved ones, and perhaps even save a life. I'll share stories from my own practice, tips that you can use immediately, and I'll answer the most common questions and misunderstandings I've heard over the years. If you've ever felt unsure about what to do when someone has sudden chest pain, or if you've ever wondered whether you or someone you care about might be at risk, you're in exactly the right place. My hope is that by the end of this recording, you'll not only understand heart strokes better, but you'll feel confident and empowered to take action, whether for yourself or for those around you. Thank you for being here. Thank you for caring, not just about your own health, but about the well-being of your community and your loved ones. Let's start this important conversation together. What is a heart stroke? The difference between heart stroke and brain stroke. Now that we've set the stage, let's dive deeper into the core of our conversation. What exactly is a heart stroke? And why is it so important for us to understand how it's both similar to and very different from a brain stroke? The basics. Stroke isn't just about the brain. When most people hear the word stroke, the first thing they think about is the brain. In fact, if you look up the definition in most dictionaries, you'll see something like a sudden interruption in the blood supply to the brain. That's true. A stroke in the brain, called an ischemic stroke, is an emergency where the brain tissue is suddenly starved of oxygen and nutrients because blood flow is blocked, usually by a clot. But here's something that surprises many people, even those who work in healthcare. The term stroke really means an acute, sudden event where the blood supply to a vital organ is interrupted, leading to tissue death if not quickly treated. The brain is just one of those vital organs, but the heart is another. When the heart's blood supply is blocked, it leads to a heart stroke, what many of you might know as a heart attack, medically called a myocardial infarction. Let's get clear. Heart stroke versus brain stroke. I know this can sound confusing at first. After all, we're used to thinking of stroke as something that affects only the brain. But let me walk you through the differences and the crucial similarities. Brain stroke, cerebral stroke. This happens when blood flow to a part of the brain is blocked or a blood vessel in the brain bursts. The affected brain cells start dying within minutes. The symptoms depend on which part of the brain is affected. Maybe one side of the face droops, speech becomes slurred, or there's sudden weakness in the arms or legs. Heart stroke, cardiac stroke, CHH, heart attack. This happens when one of the arteries supplying blood to the heart muscle becomes blocked, usually by a blood clot or a buildup of fatty deposits, plaque. The heart muscle, deprived of oxygen, begins to die. The classic symptom is chest pain, but sometimes the warning signs are much more subtle, especially in women, older adults, or people with diabetes. So in both cases, the underlying issue is the sudden loss of blood supply, but in one case the brain suffers, and in the other, the heart. Why the confusion? You might be wondering, if a heart attack and a stroke are both caused by blocked blood flow, why do we call one a stroke and the other a heart attack? The answer is partly historical and partly medical tradition. For decades, the term stroke was reserved for the brain because the symptoms are so dramatic and sudden, and because the brain is such a sensitive organ. But the process in the heart is strikingly similar: sudden, catastrophic, and life-threatening. In many ways, the real difference lies in the organ affected, not the underlying process. Both are medical emergencies. Both can cause lasting damage or death within minutes if not treated, and both share many of the same risk factors, which we'll talk about in the next section. How a heart stroke happens. The science in simple words. Let's make this as simple as possible. Your heart is a muscle. Like every muscle, it needs a constant supply of oxygen and nutrients delivered by blood flowing through its arteries. When one of these arteries gets blocked, whether by a clot or by fatty buildup, the blood can't reach a part of the heart muscle. Without blood, that part of the heart starts to die. This is what we call a heart stroke or heart attack. Imagine your heart as a house and the blood vessels as water pipes. If a pipe bursts or gets clogged, the part of the house it supplies will suffer water damage. The same is true for your heart. If the blockage isn't cleared quickly, The heart muscle is permanently damaged, making it weaker and less able to do its job. Personal stories, real cases, real people. Let me tell you about Mr. T, a patient I'll never forget. He was a 51-year-old father of three, a factory worker who never missed a day of work. He was always healthy, hardly ever visited the doctor, and prided himself on his strength. One afternoon, he began to feel a strange pressure in his chest, like something heavy was sitting on him. He thought it was indigestion, maybe from the spicy lunch he'd eaten. He ignored it, kept working, and didn't mention it to anyone. By the time he got home, the pressure had turned into pain. Still, he told his wife, "It's nothing. I just need some rest." An hour later, he collapsed in the bathroom. His wife rushed him to the hospital, but by then, a large part of his heart muscle had already died. He survived, but his life changed forever. Constant fatigue, medications, and the ever-present fear that it could happen again. What struck me most about Mr. T's story wasn't just the physical pain he endured. It was the shock and guilt his family felt. They kept asking, "Why didn't we know? Why didn't he say something sooner? Why weren't we warned?" Stories like this play out every day in every country. The symptoms of a heart stroke can be subtle, especially at first, and it's easy to mistake them for something else. But the cost of missing the signs can be devastating. Similarities and differences, symptoms, speed, and survival. Both heart strokes and brain strokes happen suddenly. Both require immediate action, but the way they show up can be different. Brain stroke, sudden numbness, weakness, especially on one side, confusion, trouble speaking, vision problems, dizziness, loss of balance. Heart stroke, chest pain or discomfort, often described as pressure, squeezing, fullness, or pain. Pain spreading to the shoulder, arm, back, neck, or jaw. Shortness of breath, cold sweat, nausea, lightheadedness. But here's something I want everyone to remember. Sometimes heart strokes have no pain at all. Especially in women, the elderly, and people with diabetes, the symptoms can be as vague as just feeling extremely tired or having mild discomfort. That's why so many people, like Mr. T, wait too long. The danger of time, why minutes matter. One of the cruelest things about heart strokes is how quickly damage sets in. Within just 20 to 40 minutes of a blocked artery, the heart muscle starts dying. In 2 hours, as much as half of the affected area may be dead. In 3 to 4 hours, nearly all of it. That's why doctors often say, time is muscle. The longer you wait, the more of your heart is lost. Compare this to the brain. In a brain stroke, doctors say, time is brain. Millions of neurons die each minute. But with heart strokes, the golden hour for treatment can be even shorter than with brain strokes. Sometimes only a few minutes make the difference between full recovery and lifelong disability or death. Why understanding matters, a global health perspective. As someone who has worked with the World Health Organization, I can tell you that both types of strokes are among the leading causes of death worldwide. But what's even more heartbreaking is that so many deaths are preventable with the right knowledge, quick action, and the courage to act even when you're unsure. It's not just about the numbers, though. Behind every statistic is a real person, a mother, father, child, or friend whose life could be saved by a single phone call, a simple decision to get help, or a bit of awareness about what's really going on. Common questions. Clearing up the confusion. Let's address a few common questions I hear from patients and families. Is a heart attack the same as a heart stroke? In many ways, yes. A heart attack is a form of heart stroke, a sudden blockage of blood to the heart muscle. The terminology can be confusing, but the process is similar to a stroke in the brain. Can you have both a brain stroke and a heart stroke? Unfortunately, yes. The risk factors for both are similar, and some people experience both in their lifetime or even at the same time. Why do some people have no symptoms at all? The heart has a way of hiding its distress, especially in certain groups. That's why it's so important to know the subtle signs and to never ignore new or unusual feelings in your chest, jaw, or back, especially if you have risk factors like high blood pressure, diabetes, or a family history of heart disease. A doctor's plea: don't ignore the warning signs. If there's one thing I hope you take away from this section, it's this: never ignore chest pain, unusual fatigue, or a sense that something isn't right. Don't brush it off. Don't wait to see if it goes away. Time lost is heart lost. Time lost can be life lost. In the next part of our conversation, I'll talk about the risk factors, the people most at risk for heart strokes, the signs to look out for, and the most common myths that keep people from getting help. But for now, please remember, the more you know, the more you can do, not just for yourself, but for everyone you love. Before we move on, let me pause for a moment. Everything we've discussed so far sets the stage for one of the most crucial parts of our conversation: recognizing the warning signs of a heart stroke before it's too late, understanding who is most at risk, and breaking down some of the common myths that put lives in danger every single day. Let's take a closer look together. Warning signs, risk groups, and common myths about heart stroke. Knowing about heart stroke is important, but recognizing the early warning signs, often subtle or easily misunderstood, can be what saves a life. And just as vital, understanding who is most at risk and unlearning some of the myths we've heard for years can mean the difference between early treatment and tragedy. Recognizing the warning signs. What does a heart stroke look and feel like? When I speak with families, patients, or even my own friends, I often ask, if you had a heart stroke right now, would you know what to look for? The answer almost always is no, not really. And that's not anyone's fault. There's so much confusing information out there, and sometimes the warning signs are not as dramatic as what we see in the movies. Here's what I want you to remember. The most common symptom of a heart stroke is chest pain or discomfort, but it doesn't always feel like pain. It can feel like pressure, tightness, squeezing, fullness, or just something strange in your chest. Some people describe it as if an elephant is sitting on their chest. Others say it feels like bad indigestion. But chest pain is just one piece of the puzzle. Other warning signs include pain or discomfort in other parts of the upper body. This can include the arms, often the left arm, back, neck, jaw, or stomach. Sometimes the pain radiates or feels like it's moving. Shortness of breath. Even without chest pain, sudden trouble breathing is a major red flag. Cold sweat. If you break out in a sweat for no clear reason, especially combined with other symptoms, this is a sign your body is under stress. Nausea or vomiting. Many people, especially women, experience an upset stomach. Lightheadedness or sudden dizziness. You might feel like you're going to faint or pass out. And here's a crucial fact. Not everyone experiences all these symptoms. Sometimes the only warning is extreme fatigue or a vague feeling that something is just not right. Women, older adults, and people with diabetes are especially likely to have silent or less typical symptoms. Stories from the heart. Subtle symptoms, big consequences. Let me share a true story. A woman in her early 60s, let's call her Mrs. L, came to the clinic complaining of fatigue. She said she was just tired all the time. She had no chest pain, no shortness of breath, nothing dramatic. She assumed it was just aging or stress. But her EKG revealed she'd had a silent heart stroke. Her heart had suffered significant damage, and she hadn't even realized it. Another patient, a young man of 42, felt mild pain in his jaw and some discomfort in his left shoulder after playing tennis. He brushed it off as muscle strain. Hours later, he was rushed to the ER with a massive heart attack. Both survived, but their stories show how easy it is to miss the warning signs. Who is most at risk? The risk factors you need to know. It's a common myth that only older men have heart strokes. The truth is, heart strokes can strike anyone, at any age, regardless of how healthy you appear. However, certain risk factors make them more likely. Let's break them down. 1. Age. Risk increases with age, but heart strokes are no longer rare in people under 50. 2. Family history. If your parents or siblings had heart disease or a heart stroke, your own risk is higher. 3. High blood pressure. This is one of the biggest risk factors and often goes unnoticed for years. 4. High cholesterol. Too much bad cholesterol leads to plaque buildup in the arteries. 5. Diabetes. High blood sugar damages blood vessels, increasing the risk. 6. Smoking. Tobacco is a major cause of artery damage. 7. Obesity. Being overweight strains the heart and increases risk. 8. Sedentary lifestyle. Lack of exercise weakens the heart and circulation. 9. Stress. Chronic stress can damage arteries and elevate blood pressure. 10. Poor diet. Diets high in processed foods, salt, sugar, and unhealthy fats all raise your risk. 11th. Gender. Men are at higher risk at a younger age, but after menopause, women's risk rises significantly, and their symptoms are often less typical. 12. Previous heart problems. If you've had angina, a heart attack, or heart surgery before, your risk of another event is higher. Knowing your risk factors empowers you to make changes that could save your life or the life of someone you love. Myths and misconceptions. What people get wrong. Let's tackle some of the most dangerous myths I've heard as a doctor. Myth 1. I'm too young to have a heart stroke. Fact. Heart strokes can and do happen to people in their 20s, 30s, and 40s. Myth 2. Heart strokes only happen to men. Fact. Women are just as much at risk and are more likely to die from heart strokes because their symptoms are often less obvious. Myth 3. If I don't have chest pain, it's not my heart. Fact. Up to a third of heart strokes occur without classic chest pain, especially in women and people with diabetes. Myth 4. If I'm healthy and active, I don't need to worry. Fact, while good health habits lower your risk, genetics and hidden conditions like high blood pressure or cholesterol can still put you at risk. Myth 5. It's just indigestion or stress. Fact. Many people mistake the symptoms for something minor, and that delay can cost precious time. A doctor's reflection. Lessons from real people. I wish I could say every story has a happy ending. I've seen patients who waited too long because they were afraid to bother anyone or because they thought they'd tough it out. I've comforted families who lost loved ones because the warning signs were missed or misunderstood or dismissed as nothing serious. But I've also seen lives saved, people who recognized something was wrong, acted quickly, and got the help they needed in time. The difference? Knowledge and courage to act. What should you do? First steps when warning signs appear. If you notice any of the symptoms above, especially if you have risk factors, don't wait. Don't drive yourself to the hospital. Call emergency services immediately. Time is critical. If you're with someone who may be having a heart stroke, stay calm, call for help, and be ready to give information to emergency responders. A quick recap. Heart stroke warning signs can be subtle. Risk factors are everywhere, but you can change many of them. Myths and misinformation are dangerous. Knowing the facts can save lives. With all of this in mind, you might be wondering, what actually happens during those crucial moments when a heart stroke strikes? What does it look like, not just from a medical standpoint, but from the real lived experience of patients and families? Let me share with you what it's really like through the stories and lessons I've gathered as a doctor and a witness to these life-changing events. The real-life battle, saving lives and facing consequences, a doctor's perspective and true stories. Now let's step into one of the most intense and important parts of our conversation. We've talked about the signs, the risks, and the myths. But what actually happens in those moments when a heart stroke strikes? What does it feel like? What do people go through? And what are the consequences, both for patients and their families, when seconds decide everything? The golden hour, every second counts. When a heart stroke strikes, time collapses. In my years as a doctor, I've seen countless lives transformed, sometimes saved, sometimes tragically lost, within just a few precious minutes. We call this window of time the golden hour. In medicine, it means the first 60 minutes after symptoms start. This hour is so important that it can mean the difference between a full recovery and permanent heart damage, between survival and loss. Let me paint a picture. A middle-aged man, let's call him Mr. Q, arrives at the emergency room, supported by his wife and adult son. His face is pale, He's sweating, and he clutches his chest. His wife is almost in tears. His son is frantically calling out, "Help, please! My dad can't breathe!" Within seconds, the team springs into action. Oxygen, IV lines, monitors, ECG. In this chaos, it's the training and calm focus of the team and the speed of their response that gives Mr. Q a fighting chance. Thanks to his family's quick action, Mr. Q receives clot-busting medication and an emergency procedure to open his blocked artery. He survives, but not all stories end this way. The reality of delayed action. Let's take another case. A woman in her 70s, Mrs. D, feels a strange tightness in her back and a wave of nausea while gardening. She dismisses it as old age, sits down for a cup of tea, and tries to rest. The discomfort fades, only to return later, more intense. By the time her daughter insists on taking her to the hospital, hours have passed. Too much time is lost. When she arrives, much of her heart muscle is already damaged beyond repair. She survives, but she is never the same. She can't walk without help, and the constant fatigue changes her life forever. Behind every emergency, the family experience. One of the things I've learned, both as a doctor and as someone who has been a patient, is that heart stroke doesn't just happen to one person, it happens to a whole family. I'll never forget the look in a young girl's eyes when her father was wheeled away for emergency heart surgery. She was only 7, holding her mother's hand, silent and wide-eyed. For her, and for so many like her, that moment is frozen in time. The waiting room is a world of its own, filled with hope, fear, and prayers whispered under breath. I have seen tears of relief when a loved one returns, and I have seen the overwhelming grief when they don't. These moments remind me that knowledge isn't just power, it's a gift we give to the people we love. Why is heart stroke so dangerous? You might ask, why is heart stroke often even more dangerous than brain stroke? There are several reasons. Speed of damage. Heart muscle dies fast, sometimes even faster than brain tissue. There's so little time to act, and symptoms are easy to miss or ignore. Unpredictable symptoms. Unlike brain stroke, which often causes dramatic visible changes, like paralysis or speech problems, heart stroke can start quietly. Many people ignore early signs or don't realize they're in danger until it's too late. Sudden cardiac arrest. In some cases, a heart stroke triggers the heart to stop beating altogether. A sudden cardiac arrest. Without immediate CPR and emergency intervention, survival is unlikely. Long-term consequences. Even if a patient survives, heart stroke can leave lifelong scars, heart failure, arrhythmias, dangerous heart rhythms, and ongoing weakness can make every day a challenge. A doctor's reflection, cases that shaped my heart. Let me share a story that changed the way I see my job. A man in his early 40s, a single father, collapsed at work. His coworkers thought he had fainted from skipping lunch. They didn't call for help right away, thinking he just needed rest. When he finally arrived at the ER, we discovered he'd had a massive heart stroke. Despite our efforts, he passed away that night. I remember his daughter's heartbreak and how everyone kept asking, could we have saved him if we'd acted sooner? These are the moments that haunt every doctor. They are why I spend time talking to community groups, schools, workplaces, anywhere people will listen about heart stroke. Because no one should lose someone they love simply because they didn't know what to do. Stories of hope when knowledge saves lives. But there are also stories of hope. A grandmother who felt short of breath while playing with her grandson called her daughter, who remembered a health talk I had given at her school. She acted quickly, and her mother received life-saving treatment. Today, that grandmother still plays with her grandson, and her family knows the value of recognizing symptoms and acting fast. What happens after surviving a heart stroke? Many people don't realize that surviving the initial heart stroke is just the beginning of a long road. Recovery can be challenging, physically, emotionally, and financially. Patients may need cardiac rehabilitation, medication for the rest of their lives, dietary changes, and ongoing support from loved ones. The emotional toll is real. Patients often feel anxious, depressed, or afraid it will happen again. Families may struggle with guilt or anxiety, but with the right support and information, many people go on to lead full, meaningful lives. Lessons from the front line. Advice I wish everyone knew. After all these years, here are the lessons I wish I could share with every family. Don't ignore subtle symptoms. Anything unusual, pain, fatigue, discomfort, deserves attention, especially if you have risk factors. Trust your instincts. If something feels wrong, seek help. It's better to be safe than sorry. Act quickly. Every minute counts. Don't delay. Support each other. Recovery is a team effort. Patients need love, patience, and understanding as they heal. Educate your loved ones. Share what you know. The life you save could be your own, or someone you care about. What about the ones we lose? I would be lying if I said that every story ends happily. As a doctor, I've delivered terrible news more times than I care to count. I have sat with families in their darkest moments. I have felt powerless too. But every loss renews my commitment to sharing knowledge, to doing whatever I can to help others avoid the same pain. From the heart, my personal message to you. As someone who has stood on both sides of the hospital bed, as a doctor and as a patient, I know how precious every moment is. A heart stroke can change a life in a heartbeat, but knowledge, preparation, and quick action can save that life. That's why I'm sharing these stories, not to frighten you, but to empower you. You are not powerless. You have the ability to learn, to recognize, to respond. And you have the power to support others, your parents, your partner, your friends, your children. A moment to reflect. I encourage you now, pause and think about the people you care about most. Picture their faces. What would you do to protect them? Sometimes it starts with simply knowing what to look for and having the courage to act. As we move forward, let's talk about what you can do right now, today, to recognize a heart stroke early, take the right actions, and protect yourself and those you love. Let's shift from understanding to empowerment and from fear to preparedness. Early recognition, what to do and how to prevent heart stroke. Now that we've walked through the real stories, the risks, and the emotions, let's focus on the most practical, life-saving part of our conversation. How can you recognize a heart stroke early? What exactly should you do if you suspect one? And, most importantly, how can you reduce your risk or help protect the people you care about? Early recognition, your first line of defense. The sooner a heart stroke is recognized, the better the chance of a positive outcome. But as we've learned, heart stroke symptoms are often subtle and easy to misinterpret. Here's what I want you to remember. Pay attention to sudden or unusual symptoms. Chest pain or pressure is the classic sign, but as we've discussed, it's not always present. Watch for shortness of breath, unexplained fatigue, discomfort in your jaw, neck, back, or arms, nausea, lightheadedness, cold sweat. Notice when something feels off. If you or someone you know suddenly feels not quite right in a way that's hard to explain, especially if they have risk factors, take it seriously. Trust your instincts, even if the symptoms don't seem severe. Silent heart strokes. Remember, sometimes heart damage happens without obvious symptoms, especially in older adults, women, and people with diabetes. If you notice persistent weakness, confusion, swelling in the legs, or sudden breathlessness, consider the possibility of a heart event. What should you do if you suspect a heart stroke? This is the crucial part. If you suspect you or someone else is having a heart stroke, do not wait. Every minute counts. Here's a simple step-by-step guide. Step 1. Call for emergency help immediately. Don't try to drive yourself. Don't let embarrassment or fear slow you down. Call your local emergency number, such as 911, right away. Paramedics can start treatment on the way to the hospital. Step 2. Chew and swallow an aspirin, if not allergic. If the person is conscious and not allergic, chewing an aspirin, usually 325 milligrams, can help slow clot formation. But do this only if you're sure it's a heart issue and if advised by emergency services. Step 3. Stay calm and keep still, rest quietly. Don't try to push through it. Avoid physical activity, which can worsen damage. Step 4. Be ready to give information. When help arrives, be ready to share the exact symptoms and when they started, any relevant medical history or medications, allergies or prior heart problems. Step 5. If the person becomes unconscious, if they stop breathing or have no pulse, start CPR if you know how, and use an automated external defibrillator, AED if available. Emergency dispatchers can often guide you by phone. Never delay. It's always better to act quickly and discover it was something minor than to wait and risk permanent heart damage or death. What if you live far from a hospital? For people in remote areas, this is a real worry. If possible, have a plan in place. Know the nearest emergency facility. Arrange transport with family or neighbors. Keep emergency numbers handy. Ask your doctor about any special precautions if you have risk factors. Helping a loved one. Support and reassurance. If you're with someone who may be having a heart stroke, your calm presence can make all the difference. Stay with them. Keep them calm. Call for help. Don't argue or try to wait and see. Encourage them to rest. Reassure them that help is coming. Sometimes your voice and your quick action can save their life. How to lower your risk. Prevention in everyday life. Now let's talk about what you can do, starting today, to lower your risk and live a heart-healthy life. The best way to treat a heart stroke is to prevent it from happening in the first place. 1. Know your numbers: blood pressure, cholesterol, and blood sugar. Get regular checkups, even if you feel healthy. High blood pressure, high cholesterol, and diabetes often have no symptoms, but quietly damage your arteries over time. Blood pressure. Ideal is below 120/80 millimeters of mercury. Cholesterol. Aim for low LDL, bad cholesterol, higher HDL, good cholesterol. Blood sugar. Keep it in the healthy range, especially if you're at risk for diabetes. Ask your doctor to help you understand and track your numbers. Knowledge is power. 2. Healthy eating habits. A heart-healthy diet doesn't have to be boring. Focus on fruits, vegetables, whole grains, lean proteins, especially fish and plant-based, nuts, seeds, and healthy fats like olive oil. Limit salt, sugar, red and processed meats, fried foods, and highly processed snacks. Portion control. Avoid overeating, even healthy foods. A good rule: fill half your plate with vegetables and fruits, 1/4 with whole grains, 1/4 with lean protein. 3. Stay active. Every day, exercise doesn't have to mean running marathons. Aim for at least 150 minutes of moderate activity per week, like brisk walking, cycling, swimming, or even dancing. The key is consistency. Find activities you enjoy and make them a regular part of your routine. Even short walks, taking the stairs, or stretching at your desk make a difference. 4. Don't smoke or quit. If you do, smoking is one of the most powerful risk factors for heart stroke. If you smoke, quitting is the single best thing you can do for your heart. If you don't smoke, avoid secondhand smoke whenever possible. 5. Limit alcohol. Heavy drinking increases your risk of heart problems. If you drink, do so in moderation. Generally 1 drink per day for women, 2 for men. 6. Manage stress. Chronic stress damages your arteries and raises your risk. Find healthy ways to manage stress: deep breathing, meditation, spending time with loved ones, hobbies, nature walks. If you need help, talk to someone you trust or a mental health professional. 7. Get quality sleep. Aim for 7 to 8 hours of sleep per night. Poor sleep increases your risk of heart problems. 8. Take medications as prescribed. If your doctor has prescribed medicine for blood pressure, cholesterol, or other conditions, take them exactly as directed, even when you feel fine. 9. Regular checkups and screening. See your healthcare provider regularly, especially if you have risk factors or a family history. Early detection can catch problems before they become emergencies. Special tips for families and communities. Share what you know. Talk openly with family members about heart health. Encourage healthy habits at home. Cook together, exercise together, support each other's efforts. Learn CPR. It only takes a short class, and you could save a life. Be a role model. Your choices inspire those around you. Facing life after a heart stroke, recovery and hope. If you or someone you love has survived a heart stroke, remember, recovery takes time. Be patient with yourself and with others. Cardiac rehabilitation programs help rebuild strength, confidence, and hope. Emotional healing is just as important as physical healing. Reach out for support when you need it. Many people go on to live long, fulfilling lives after a heart stroke, with the right care and lifestyle changes. From knowledge to action, a personal encouragement, I hope after all we've discussed, that you feel more prepared and less afraid. The truth is, heart stroke can happen to anyone, but knowledge, awareness, and action save lives. No matter who you are, where you live, or what your background, you have the power to change your future and the future of those around you. As we come to the close of this journey, let me offer you a message of hope, encouragement, and a call to action. Because heart health is not just about avoiding disease, but about living every day with purpose and connection. Closing message: hope, encouragement, and a call to community action. We've come a long way together on this journey, talking about facts, risks, real-life stories, and what you can do to protect yourself and your loved ones. Now, as we reach the end, I want to leave you not with fear, but with hope, strength, and the knowledge that small steps can make a huge difference. A message of hope: you are never helpless. Let me say this as clearly as I can. No matter your age, your health history, or your circumstances, you are never helpless in the face of heart stroke. Every day I see people take charge of their health, making better choices, supporting their families, learning new skills, and becoming advocates for their own well-being. Remember, most heart strokes are preventable. Even when one strikes, acting quickly and decisively saves lives. And when you know what to look for, you can be the difference between despair and a new beginning. Your health is a journey, not a destination. Taking care of your heart isn't about perfection. It's about progress. Don't be discouraged by setbacks and don't compare yourself to others. Every healthy meal, every walk around the block, every doctor's visit, every moment you spend with loved ones instead of smoking or stressing, these are victories. You're not expected to change everything overnight. Start with one step. Schedule a checkup. Swap out one unhealthy snack for a fruit. Invite a friend for a walk. Read a little more about heart health. Share what you've learned today with one person you care about. These small actions add up over weeks, months, and years, creating a foundation of health and resilience that protects you and your family. Community. The power of shared knowledge. Heart health is not just a personal matter. It's a community responsibility. Think about the people in your life: parents, siblings, children, friends, neighbors, co-workers. When you share what you know, you multiply your impact. Organize a heart health talk at your workplace or school. Encourage your family to learn CPR together. Start a walking group in your neighborhood. Use social media to spread awareness. One post could reach someone who needs it most. Together, we can build communities where knowledge saves lives, where help comes quickly, and where people look out for one another. Not just in emergencies, but every single day. A doctor's wish. What I want for you as a doctor, as someone who's seen both sides of the hospital bed, I wish you a life full of laughter, movement, and connection. A life where health worries don't hold you back from the things and people you love. I wish for you the confidence to listen to your body and trust your instincts, the courage to take action, even if you're unsure, the wisdom to ask for help and offer it freely, the joy of growing stronger together with those you care about. When in doubt, take action. If you remember nothing else, remember this: when in doubt, take action. Don't wait. Don't hope it will go away. Don't be embarrassed or afraid of making a fuss. Your life and the lives of those around you are worth far more than a moment of hesitation. You can make a difference. I want you to believe this deeply. You can make a difference. You can change the story for yourself, your family, your workplace, your community. You have the power to turn knowledge into life-saving action, to be a voice of calm and leadership when others are afraid, to pass along lessons that protect generations. Final encouragement. A heartfelt thank you for joining me on this journey. Thank you for caring. about yourself, about others, and about creating a world where fewer lives are lost to heart stroke. I hope you walk away from this recording with not just facts, but with a sense of hope and determination. You are stronger and more capable than you realize. Never underestimate the power of what you now know, and never doubt that you can, and do, save lives. Take care of your heart, take care of your loved ones. And remember, every day is a new chance to make healthy, loving choices. With gratitude, a doctor who believes in you.